going to sit here. So, so I'm a journalist with Axios here in Austin. Just a quick shout out. If you're interested in Austin politics, culture, food, you should, and you live in Austin, or you're interested in Austin, you should subscribe to Axios Austin. You can just go to axios.com/local, click on Austin, type in your email address, and you'll get our free newsletter. I have a theory that all the people at the Grit Daily House, everybody here has only been in Austin for less than 2 years. So if that's not true of you, if anybody here, can you raise your hand? Okay, so I'm proven right in my theory. So I want to ask you guys to start, why did you come to Austin, and what is it about the investment scene here that drew you from, I think you guys both came from California, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. What drew you here from California?
Let me go first. My mic working?
Is it working? And actually, before you even answer that question, I should have asked, why don't you say clearly the name of your investment group, and also say a word or two about that as well.
I'm the founder of Henry.
Why don't you use my mic, and then we can swap it around if the other mic doesn't work.
Got it. Yeah, sorry about that. I'll repeat. I'm Tyler Knight. I'm the founder of Henry Collective, which is a venture syndicate on AngelList. Henry stands for High Earner, Not Rich Yet, which is the acronym that's been used to describe the cohort of people who have a good job, make high wages, but have struggled to create wealth over time based on higher cost of living, higher cost of buying a home, inflation, et cetera. And what I've set out to do is introduce the historically inaccessible asset class of high caliber venture-backed startups to those folks. And so what I do is I get an allocation from usually early stage startups, seed to Series A, and then I structure SPVs with my syndicate of about 2,500 people, write an investment memo, distribute that to them, and they can decide whether or not to invest on a deal-by-deal basis.
What brought you to Austin? Does this work? What brought you to Austin?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that. The first is I was actually here in 2018 for a friend's bachelor party and had the best time, enjoyed Austin so much, loved the culture, loved the food. And I thought to myself that week, and I was in investment banking in San Francisco at the time, and I was like, the first opportunity I get, I'm moving to Austin, Texas. And once the pandemic hit, I was working at a venture capital fund, ended up starting Henry Collective. So obviously it's the kind of first opportunity I had to be anywhere in the world. And I packed up my bags that week and drove from San Francisco to Austin, Texas. That's the first part of the story. I just really liked being here. And the second part of the story is obviously had a lot of friends in venture capital at the time who were kind of in a similar boat, could also for the first time be anywhere, and everybody kept saying how great of a tech scene Austin was becoming. It was really kind of a, not necessarily competition, but a lot of people from New York were moving to Miami, a lot of people from California were moving to Austin, Texas, and I kept hearing great things about it. And one thing that I found a little bit interesting about the existing tech in financial infrastructure in Austin was that there weren't that many big name or VCs that you had, or that had a presence around the US. There's a lot of VCs that focus on Texas. And I really had a good feeling about the redistribution of Silicon Valley, moving to Austin, Texas as well, or Austin, Texas being a big benefactor of that, and kind of taking the opportunity to move here and be a VC in the area and be able to invest in Austin-based startups.
Thank you. That's interesting. But one other quick question. Why is your watch on East Coast time?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what time it is. I'm guilty. I do not wear this to check the time.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
Good catch, though.
What about you, Morgan? Why don't you tell me a moment about how long you've been at Silverton and what brought you to Austin?
Yeah, thanks. I've been at Silverton more or less since the beginning, so it's a little over 17 years. I've been in Austin that long as well. I moved out from the Bay Area, so I'm also from California. I think given it's been 17 years, I was probably considered part of the expeditionary California force to scout and explore Austin before the masses kind of
That's
moved
about
here.
when I moved here.
Okay, we got that in common. Aren't a lot of us, actually. And yeah, my rationale for moving here was purely professional. So at the time, I was working in venture in San Francisco, had figured out within the venture industry that the top returns accrue to the very select top few firms. It's a power law distribution. And California had quite a few firms that kind of fit the bill, super good at what they do, had made a name for themselves in the Bay Area. We're doing great. When I looked at Austin, had some friends down here. Austin didn't really have that. Austin Ventures was here, which probably predates a lot of the folks here in terms of even knowing who those guys are. But they were the biggest firm in the Southwest for probably 3 decades. In any event, they were moving later stage, raising huge funds, trying to do a lot of various things. And I really had a passion for early stage venture and felt like they were kind of foregoing that aspect of the market, and kind of felt like starting Silverton and refocusing on early stage entrepreneurs in a growing geography could put us in the spot of being that top firm and backing the best entrepreneurs here in Texas. And so moved down here for that purpose, and fast forward 17 years, we're the largest, most active, and longest standing venture firm in the state now. Feel like the market has come to us a bit in terms of all the great things that have happened to Austin, and just happy to be a part of it.
One thing I'm curious about is, just based on my own reporting, is there's an ongoing debate about the politics of the state and how that affects business. Obviously, there are a lot of businesses that move to Texas, but some businesses have said that they're less inclined to move here because of the politics, or they open the way for employees to move to other parts of the country. I'm just curious whether any of that blips on your radar at all in terms of entrepreneurship or investments, or in reality is the work you do and what you're seeing in terms of businesses moving around the country or startup money, is it really insulated from politics?
Yeah, so, coming from California, the idea that Texas isn't a business-friendly state, kind of stands out to me. I think, Elon Musk is probably the best example of like being frustrated with the politics and, government in California, and kind of deliberately choosing Austin and relocating down here with Tesla and the Boring Company, and to some extent SpaceX as well. So I think they are easier to deal with than a lot of the jurisdictions in California. I think Austin, probably relative to other areas in Texas, is a little bit more kind of protectionist of the environment here, but I still think they're business friendly. They're just, in some cases, a little anti-progressive in terms of like the infrastructure and development that needs to go on here to support the population change. But in terms of like providing incentives to companies to move here, I think they're doing a pretty good job. I think we could all have bones to pick. In terms of like how that affects startups and the companies we invest in, everybody needs to hire employees. And one of the knocks on Texas, originally it was, is the market big enough to create billion-dollar outcomes? Well, now we have, 12 or 14 of those, and 7 of them are in the Silverton portfolio. And so I think we've kind of answered the question of like, can we create billion-dollar companies? And now it's like, can you create $10 billion companies? And creating a $10 billion company requires that you pull talent from somewhere, and it's usually bigger companies. So if the business environment isn't friendly enough to entice, and you want people with relevant experience, obviously. So if the business environment isn't enticing enough to get those bigger companies like Oracle and Tesla and others to move here, then the talent pool isn't rich enough to develop those companies. So it's super important, but more so it's other things like, cost of living and other things which indirectly are controlled by the government. And I think, that's a longer discussion. But one of the advantages that we have here in Austin, even though cost of living has come up quite a bit relative to California, is like we can expand out concentrically, and like you can still buy a 4,000 square foot house here for $400K. If you're willing to drive for 25 minutes. In California, you probably have to, at least in the San Francisco area, that'd probably be 2 hours. So we do have some kind of inherent advantages that aren't really government related, but I think kind of help protect us from some of the things like the cost of living enhancements.
And Tyler, if you're dying to answer that question, you can. But otherwise, I have a follow-up question for you based on what Morgan just said.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the only thing I'll add is that I think Morgan?
Oh, no.
Sorry. The pro-business part of Texas, I think, has a bigger effect on later stage companies. I think that's why you see companies like Tesla move not their entire operation, but their home base here. Because I think it took Elon, 18 months to build a building as big as the Pentagon, and he still would have been getting his paperwork done in San Francisco. But I think that does have a pretty significant trickle-down effect in early stage companies when founders that want to pick a place to start a company know that the environment for them to also grow a company is favorable. And I think when you also consider the no state income taxes, the quality of life here in Austin, I think it makes Austin one of the better places to start a company right now.
And I just want to, I got the kind of wrap-up signal, but I wanted to ask one other thing about Henry. High earner, right? HE.
Yeah.
So what counts as a high earner nowadays?
Well, I mean, for the purposes of what I do, I would consider anyone who is a accredited investor a high earner, which means that you have to either have $1 million in net assets, not counting your home, or make $200,000 2 consecutive years. And I think that essentially everybody should treat their wealth like a pension fund where you're allocating your investable capital into multiple buckets of asset classes. And I think historically people have gone, okay, I'm going to put 20% of my investable capital into the Vanguard Tech Index because that's a growth investment. But in reality, I think the real outcome or the high upside outcomes lie in venture-backed startups. And I also think that being involved in kind of the entrepreneurial economy is something that's really exciting for everyone. Getting involved in companies that are really transforming the industries that they're in is really exciting. And the financial upside is obviously great too. So I think generally folks who have the ability to do that should really consider investing in startups.
I feel like there are 1,000 more things we could talk about, but I think we'll end it there actually. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Asher. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.